A legal appointment. That's what the trustees I talked to are calling this. They say the news took them by surprise, and now they're talking to legal counsel to figure out their next steps.
The manpower was just very stressed and critical to the point of almost break.
Tiffany Henyard, also known as the self-proclaimed super mayor of Dolton, Illinois, has found herself in the center of a stormy controversy that just keeps getting wilder. You might think it's something straight out of a political drama, but this is a real-life saga of a mayor who seems to have act for stirring up trouble. Henyard's latest move to launch an investigation into her administration's spending has put her squarely in the spotlight, and not in a flattering way. In fact, her attempts to clear her name may have backfired, exposing layers of her own alleged misuse of public funds.
But it saddens my heart that you are up here at this special meeting and not downstairs where we have big bingo.
So here's the scene. Henyard decides to start a probe into the town's finances, aiming to tackle accusations of unauthorized spending. So here's the twist: by digging into her administration's credit card transaction, she ends up digging her own grave, or so it seems. Sewing investigation was intended to make her look like a hero, someone taking accountability and cleaning up a mess, but instead she's now looking more like the lead character in a classic scandal. Henyard, as you might guess, is no ordinary mayor. She holds not just one but two powerful positions. Not only is she the mayor of Dolton, but she's also the head honcho over at Thornton Township, where she serves as the board supervisor. And let's just say her dual roles have allowed her access to a pretty impressive stash of public cash.
Needed those officers to be on the street fighting crime, and instead we have several officers that are riding around protecting.
So this has opened up plenty of opportunities for spending spur, and according to her critics, that's exactly what she's been doing. Lavish, big budget events and payments to entertains aren't the kinds of expenses that usually make it onto a local government's budget sheet for Henyard. It's just another day on the job, and get this, all of these extravagant expenses were reportedly authorized without anyone else's approval. Sounds suspicious. It gets juicier now. Let's dive a little deeper. Henyard's history of spending big has raised eyebrows all over Thornton Township. She splashed out on events that critics say were unnecessary, and some of these events allegedly lined the pockets of her associates. At one such event, reports show she spent tens of thousands to bring in big-name performers for a one-night gig.
Were you?
It's not paid by them.
Did you fly first class to Las Vegas?
Any other questions?
So meanwhile, the town's finances are shambles, and the trustees are furious. They voted against her proposal, citing financial irresponsibility. But Henyard plowed ahead anyway, seemingly undaunted by the board's disapproval. Then why wouldn't she? Her role as township supervisor has also been a pretty lucrative gig, adding a significant chunk to her yearly earnings. On a wonder she's been living the high life. When the investigation began, it seemed like a desperate move to save face. But things took an unexpected turn when Hen's own assistant decided it was time to spill the beans.
He is absolutely not guilty of all 9 counts. I believe he's cooperating. And if you cooperate, you have to admit your guilt.
In a township meeting, this assistant went public with a list of questionable expenses that were allegedly authorized by Henyard herself. Among these were pricey trips, high-end dinners, and luxury accommodations that would make any taxpayer do a double take. So the assistant painted a picture of a mayor who treated public funds as her personal piggy bank, spending on trips that included first-class flights and stays of 5 hotels. So we're talking thousands upon thousands of currency units, folks, and not for official business either.
That's one of the reasons I won't know when we go through our board packets. It's like, some of this stuff, it's like you don't know exactly what it's for, and then when you ask a question, there's no answer.
So I think Henyard would have denied everything, but she had other plans. Instead of addressing the accusations, she turned the tables, accusing her assistant of playing a part in the supposed scheme. According to Henyard, it was her assistant who mismanaged the funds using township resources for personal benefit. If that sounds convenient, well, you're not alone. It's the kind of deflection that would make any spin doctor proud. But wait, there's more. As if things weren't dramatic enough, Henyard also pointed the finger at Keith Freeman, her former associate and ally. Freeman and Henyard used to be close, but this feud has turned into a full-blown soap opera. Freeman has been accused of his own share of shady dealings, and he's been vocal about what he calls Henyard's attempts to frame him. He's hinted that Henyard's behavior goes beyond just misuse of funds and might even involve personal bendigas. Freeman's allegations have added a whole new layer of intrigue, suggesting that this isn't just about finances, but also betrayal and revenge. I was saying, no, he's not employed by us, so you have got just this gation. It's clear that Henyard has a knack for getting people fired up, but not necessarily in a good way. During the township meeting where her assistant made those explosive revelations, the crowd was far from sympathetic. One resident, barely able to contain their frustration, shouted, "Why isn't she in prison?" Yet others murmured in agreement, clearly fed up with Henyard's alleged antics. It was obvious that the patients of Dolan's residence was wearing thin. People are starting to ask tough questions, and they're not buying Henyard's excuses anymore. Another comment that made the rounds on social media echoed this sentiment, with someone saying, "This is D at its finest. No one's going to say it. We wouldn't have this problem if there was some sort of merit to voting." Henyard's reaction to these comments, well, she's doubling down. Instead of showing remorse, she's painting herself as a victim of political persecution. According to her, this is all part of a smear campaign orchestrated by the trustees and other political rivals. She insists that her actions have always been in the best interest of the town, and she's even implied that her critics are only after her because they're intimidated by a strong woman in power. It's a classic defense, but it's not one that seems to be swaying public opinion.
Should pay everybody. Is it the reason why you guys are not paying whatever that vendor is?
What was it for?
It was for shirts. That's what it's.
Many in Dalton, the question isn't whether Henyard will face consequences, but when the town's finances are reportedly in the red, with deficits piling up and services suffering. So residents are fed up, and the trustees are making moves to rein in Henyard's spending. They've already put measures in place to limit her use of township credit cards, and they're working on freezing other aspects of the budget. Henyard, however, doesn't seem too worried. In a recent meeting, she declared that she had cleaned up Dalton, proudly listing her accomplishments as if the allegations didn't exist. But for anyone who's been following this saga, it's clear that her version of reality isn't quite aligning with what's actually happening. One way that the government always does it is to go and investigate people around her. And that's what they're doing here as Henyard's spending practices continue to unravel. Even more jaw-dropping details emerged. Among the most talked about revelations was the discovery of her hefty spending on a personal security detail, reportedly costing taxpayers thousands in overtime. Former Dalton Police Chief Robert Collins claimed that officers who should have been patrolling the streets were instead acting as Henyard's personal entourage. According to Collins, the resources dedicated to protecting Henyard left his department stretched to the breaking point, impacting their ability to effectively address crime in the community. So it wasn't just about money anymore. Residents were now worried that Henyard priorities were actually compromising their safety. Adding to the spectacle, Henyard is now under investigation by none other than former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was hired to look into Dolan's finances. Dalton residents right now, and as the pressure mounts, Henyard's response will be critical. Will she step down? Will she continue to fight? Or will she finally face the music? Only time will tell. But for now, Dalton is watching and waiting, and the story of Tiffany Henyard is far from its final chapter. So what do you think? Should Henyard be held accountable for her spending, or is she just a victim of a political witch hunt? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you've been following this wild ride, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for the next episode in the saga of Dalton's Supermayor. This is a story you won't want to miss, and thanks for watching my video.